The name of the book is Switching Gears by Martin Armitage. Yes, after a couple of false starts, it's completed and now available on Amazon. If you're a Kindle reader, it's available for 99 cents. If you subscribe to Kindle Unlimited, it's free. It's also available in paperback. Go to Amazon, type in Switching Gears, Martin Armitage. Hello, welcome to another episode of Papa Bear Hikes. All right, I'd like to welcome back a friend of the Papa Bear Hikes podcast, backpacker, hiker, and ICU doctor, Dr. Robert Scanlon. Dr. Scanlon, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me back, Martin.
Dr. Scanlon, for the people who missed the episode last time you were on, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm 20 years into clinical practice as a critical care and pulmonary medicine physician. How it pertains to this podcast, I became a hiker pretty much right from the beginning of those 20 years. The hospital had some docs and nurses and who would get together on Saturday. For those of you who hike in southern New York State, it was in Harriman State Park. We'd meet at the Dunkin' Donuts in Sloatsburg on Saturday morning and all go to into Harriman and hike. And just I had been a Boy Scout earlier in life, but it hadn't really hit me how much the outdoors, how therapeutic the outdoors was until that point in my life. And I really took to it. And really didn't want to stop, and thankfully haven't.
Yeah, I think there's just so many health benefits, emotional benefits across the board when we're getting outside. I just don't think we're built to be indoors 24/7. I think we're supposed to be out far more than we're in.
Right. Absolutely. And so to kind of dovetail on that, I've been trying to get a little bit more diversity in my professional life or medicine life. All I know is medicine. That's all I'm educated in. But I've taken the hiking and the medicine together and have become more enthusiastic, as an enthusiast, I should say, of wilderness medicine and how it applies to the outdoors, how to keep hikers safe and from being statistics, et cetera. I'm in the process of writing a book on the subject, not as a wilderness medicine book, not as a survival book, but an area where it's not really been fully explored. And that's where, hikers die. Hikers need rescue every single week across North America alone. It's astonishing. And so part of my book is dedicated to this, or the whole book is dedicated to this, but part of my book is tailed onto what you just said, that, we're not built for the indoors. And, there's an exercise in Japan called forest bathing. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but, we subconsciously probably take to it, but we biologically, we grew up as a species in that environment. So there's got to be things that we don't even realize that help. And the Japanese have actually discovered that there are chemicals in the air, in nature, that are emitted by plants to keep themselves from getting, bugs and diseases, etc. But they have benefits beyond. It's health benefits, longevity benefits, just calming, et cetera, that these chemicals actually exert on us. And so that has become a big enthusiastic activity in that country. But, so there's tons of benefits we don't even realize.
We'll be looking forward to that book, and we'll have to have you back on to discuss the book when it's published.
Would love to.
Love to have you on to talk about that. It sounds so interesting. We're talking about, you have an interest in doing what you can as a medical professional, keeping people protected, not become a statistic, as you said. Well, right. a little bit of background for everybody on why I invited Dr. Scanlon back on. The gang and I were out hiking the final section of the Loyalsock a couple of weeks ago, the Loyalsock Trail in Pennsylvania. And the trail started off very, very steep. Now, we're all close to 60. One of us just turned 60. Well, one of the guys in the group said, sometimes I get this weird feeling in my chest. Now, when I was in my 20s, I thought, okay, I'm having a good workout. I'm really pushing myself. But at this age, at 56 years old, am I pushing myself into a dangerous place when I'm doing this? And if I am, what should I be doing to prevent having a cardiac situation? Should there be warm-ups I'm doing? So let's start with this, Dr. Scanlon. As hikers, let's start with what might be some of the warning signs that we may be heading into a dangerous cardiac situation when we're out doing our activities.
Right. Coming back to those statistics I was mentioning, 6 people die in U.S. national parks, just U.S. national parks, not state parks, not county parks, not other hiking areas, just U.S. national parks every week. 6 die. Some of those are intentional, unfortunately. The people intentionally end their lives in these environments. But amongst all the unintentional deaths, a certain percentage of them, maybe 25% of those, are medically related. So this is kind of a big deal. And so cardiac is certainly at the top of the cause of these deaths and otherwise people who are, kind of paralyzed by whatever cardiac issue, not physically paralyzed, but they can't go any further because they've got angina. So certainly the performing at a higher level than we do in our daily, societal lives. If you're not able to handle something you had previously been able to, accompanied by some other symptoms, that should be the first warning sign. Of course, chest discomfort. There's different types of chest discomfort. Pressure or tightness seems to be the more common sensation that people will feel, rather than sharp stabbing pain, things like that. That can be other sources. Jaw pain, sometimes neck pain, of course, left arm, everybody hears about as well. Any of that should definitely be a warning sign. We're as we get older, I'm 52, and I'm already starting to see people who are my age not making it to their 53rd birthday. And so that only increases as we get older, and these things just become higher and more real as we get a greater vintage. And so I think also examining your own history. What kind of health do I have? What kind of family history do I have? So all this stuff weighs into what you should do to prevent these things. So if there is heart disease, especially anyone who's had to have a stent, a cardiac catheterization, had a heart attack or bypass before age about 65 as your predecessors, either siblings or your parents, etc., that should be a warning sign. Before you even feel a symptom, that a stress test, or at least a discussion about a stress test, should be made with your doctor. But if your friend who is complaining of that chest discomfort, I don't know how new or how different that was from when he was in his 20s. How different did it feel? But absolutely, these individuals, if you feel something different, don't ignore it, because that could mean a lot. It could mean your longevity or lack thereof. And so your friend should definitely be advised. Talk to your doctor. I know you hear that on the TV all the time. But talk to them about, like, hey, this is what happened. I'm a little concerned. And your doc should meet that concern just based on the symptoms. Um, certainly there is a, actually, I was thinking when I first start off a hike and it's flat and I later come to these steeper climbs, it's okay. But if I go from the parking lot to, 45 degree, dang.
And that's what started the discussion, is that we had 2 or 3 hikes in a row where, jumped out of the car and bang, we were ripping the Band-Aid off, jumping into the deep end of the pool. And part of our conversation was, should we be maybe starting a half mile further back, even a mile further back, to let our bodies warm up before we hit that steep part of the trail?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so getting, with that, we're getting a little bit further away from the cardiac side, but for muscle physiology side, your performance is way better, with warmer muscles. So loaded dynamic exercises have been proven to improve performance and likely efficiency of the muscles in exercise. So certainly, doing air squats or weighted squats with your pack, just to warm up those quads, because they're about to go crazy. And so what you have with cold muscles is muscle fibers. So if you look at a muscle in a cross section, and most of us have had steak. When you cross section and you look at the steak, you might see like finger-like thickness, round kind of bundles, if you will. Or pot roast is a great example because it all just kind of falls apart, and those fibrils will actually kind of stick together, those bundles. And so those bundles are filled with millions of these fibers that are only partially overlapped. And when a muscle contracts, it gets shorter. So the only way the muscle can get shorter is by those, there's little cross arms, kind of like on each of those fibers that are doing this. They're like pulling the fibers in a greater overlap with one another. And with a cold muscles, you only have part of that muscle that's actually recruited to do that work. So when you're demanding all that work of you, you're taking on much more oxygen inefficiency. That muscle's drawing more oxygen out of the system. You're having to breathe harder, heart's working harder, all that stuff. As opposed to when you're warmed up, there's a lot of calcium inside those muscles, and all the cross arms that are able to bring those fibers closer and overlap more completely are more recruited. So more density of recruited fibers within the muscle belly are ready to rock when you're warmed up. So I would definitely warm up before doing those big peaks. If you're like, oh crap, if they're 10 feet from the car.
Yeah, we've done a little bit too much of that, I think. Because I know this with my experience, right? When I may be winded early on, but at the end of the day, if I've got a steep climb to make, I'm tired. Naturally I'm starting to feel a bit fatigued, but I'm not as winded making that final ascent.
Right.
So what you're saying really is resonating. When I'm comparing it to my own experiences when I go on my multi-day and multi-week backpacking trips.
Yeah, absolutely. I often use cars as a metaphor for us in many ways, and our oxygen is our fuel, our engine is our muscles, and so our muscles become more fuel efficient when they're warmed up. So we don't utilize so oxygen molecules will go further in fueling those muscles, so we don't have to breathe as hard when we're all warmed up and we've been going a few miles before that ascent, and therefore the heart doesn't have to work as hard to pump it around to get to the muscles. And so I think that's definitely helpful, in bringing it back to the cardiac stuff, helpful in mitigating those symptoms. But certainly, as we're all, and there are plenty of 40-year-olds who are having smoldering cardiac disease, right now as we speak, and who may be going out on the trails this weekend, who don't know that they've got a smoldering issue. But for those folks, usually the red flag is family history. Maybe they're overweight or have high blood pressure, and they have stacking up of medical issues that increase their chances of that becoming a problem when they're really doing more than they do on the average day.
Hopefully we're all getting annual physicals. Right? We're taking care of that. We're seeing our doctor on a regular basis. Would you recommend, if you're somebody who spends a lot of time, or even just a little bit of time, because the person that's going out there that's maybe even slightly overweight, that hasn't physically prepared themselves, can be in danger. But when you're going in for that annual physical, have a discussion with your doctor about this, that, well, hey, look, I'm going to be going out on a 2 or 3 day backpacking trip and covering this many miles, and just running that by your doctor.
Yeah. It should pique the interest, of the doc, and it's good to challenge them with, how do you think I'll do? And you'll never be able to pin them down, because, they're not going to want to be liable for all that. But they can give you an honest assessment based on your metrics, your background history, even your medications, that, I think you could handle that. Or I don't know, Joe, I might need to, do a couple of tests before, maybe a nuclear stress test or a regular treadmill stress test, just to see, so we all have peace of mind. And that, I think that is definitely something in other contexts that have literally saved lives. Because
the doctor can't guarantee your safety out there, right? There's no guarantee that's not going to happen. But you just said the doctor maybe looks at your chart and says, well, let's see, you're on cholesterol medicine, high blood pressure medicine, and you can definitely lose maybe 20 pounds. So let's talk about maybe just going for some shorter walks, losing some weight, and getting the blood pressure and cholesterol under control.
Right, absolutely. And while the exercise is welcome, go and it depends. Were you a triathlete and you're going to go over a 3-day backpack? Yeah, you're fine. Every time you do a triathlon, you're doing a stress test times 10. But if George is a couch potato and he wants to do a 3-day backpacking trip and cover 15 miles a day, he's out of his mind. To a clinician who knows that they're not doing much more than walking from the couch to the TV or something. And so it's all in context, but certainly having that discussion is definitely life preserving for many who are destined to have that kind of experience or negative effect of what we just love to do.
Because as you pointed out, I mean, even the healthiest among us, we're not immune from this. And I got to tell you, it was about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe my last year as a Boy Scout volunteer. There was somebody in our community, I think the neighboring town, and he was with a group up in New Hampshire. They were hiking the Whites, and he had a heart attack out there with his 2 kids and with this Boy Scout group. Healthy guy, my age, and had a heart attack out there. Freaked me out.
Absolutely. Makes you think twice.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I started thinking, wow, it can happen to any of us anywhere. And listening to our bodies, I guess when we're out there, it's just being able to recognize this isn't just me pushing myself too hard. This isn't just a steep uphill and there's something else going on here and I need to just stop.
Right. Absolutely. When you stop and let things simmer down, you're decreasing the demand on your heart to keep pumping that blood around and everything else. The harder it pumps, the more oxygen it demands and blood flow through its arteries. And if there's a blockage in there that that will only let so much blood flow past to a certain segment of it. But beyond a certain amount of work, it demands more flow than it can provide. Then that segment's going to give you trouble. Either you force yourself into a heart attack, etc. But if you decrease your myocardial oxygen demand, I'm talking a little bit technical here, but the muscle of your heart, if you decrease its oxygen demand and blood flow demand to a lesser level, then you won't force yourself into that kind of situation. I'm curious, did your friend, hopefully he made it back to society?
No.
Oh my
No,
God.
He died out there in the whites. Yeah. It's just totally, somebody had sent me the information. I don't even know if it was public at that point. I was just like, I was genuinely just like shocked. I didn't know this individual. I didn't know him personally. But just seeing that this guy was a year older than me, I was like, wow. It really just threw me back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, that's the importance of, and you mentioned it, listening to your body and say like, damn, I've done this hill, 10 times already this year, and I've never felt this. I've worked to this level. This is new. And to go past something that you should be paying attention to, that's bad news.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Start your day with a moment of mindfulness with the Morning Meditation for Women podcast. Whether you're new to meditation, trying to kickstart your meditation practice, or a seasoned meditator, you'll love these quick meditations designed to start your day with intention, love, and a deep sense of peace. Start your day with the Morning Meditation for Women podcast, brought to you by the Women's Meditation Network.
When we're hiking in a group, I have to wonder how much ego becomes a part of it. I don't want to be the guy that slows the group down. I don't want to be seen as the old guy that can't handle this anymore.
Everybody's gonna, knock you for it. Like, come on, Yeah, you can hear all the smack talk and, you can certainly peer pressure, I guess. And this guy you were referring to, hiking in the whites, is with his kids, who are probably, way more capable than he, and, he's trying to keep up with them. And he may have just blown past a warning sign that, that got him into real trouble. Ugh.
I hike with guys and, we kid each other and have fun out there, but, if somebody's not feeling well, whether they got a sore muscle or, just not, we've all had our days. We're just not feeling it. We're a little sluggish, very supportive of each other. And I'm grateful for that, because I think sometimes we impose it on ourselves. It's our own egos or our own fear of being judged by our peers that gets in the way with it. But I know with the guys I hike with, I just would have to suck it up and say, guys, something's not right. I need to stop, or we need to turn around, or I need to take a long break here.
Right. Well, yeah, that's definitely, and yes, and being with people who understand, the bigger picture, getting through the hike is not life-changing, but one of your hike mates not getting through that hike is life-changing. And so if you're running with people who understand that and have a grasp of that concept, then they should understand very much what you need and what
I consider myself very fortunate, right? I have very supportive and very compassionate hiking buddies, and with our group, back to our whole rip the Band-Aid off right out of the car approach, then we might be correct in believing, even if we have to add an extra half mile or mile onto the hike, do it so that our heart is warmed up before we hit that steep section.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's sport specific warm-ups. If you're doing baseball, you want to do sprinting and, the bats, the bat swings. If you're doing hiking, you got to work your quads, your hamstrings, your calves, and, stretch them out first and then, load them up. And so do, warm-ups, whether you're walking for a half a mile, like you said, or, you're like, well, there's nowhere, there's just road, parking lot, trail. Let's do something here right in the parking lot and to warm up those muscles. That's totally valid too.
Right. Cause, we're talking worst case scenario right now, but there's also the, fatigue injuries, like, if you're not stretching your calves properly, right?
Absolutely.
Soft tissue issues if you don't stretch properly or warm up.
Yeah, I'm actually quite guilty of not adequately warming up. I'm just so excited when I get to the trailhead that I run out. So I'm not trying to pontificate at all. I'm just as guilty. I'm like, a third of the way through, I'm like, I never really did anything to warm up, stretch, whatever. I used to have really bad quadriceps cramps when I would hike. And so, but I figured out how to fix that. But part of that was probably not stretching and warming up as well.
All right. So that's all been really helpful information because I think people of all ages need to be concerned about that. And we're younger. Of course, we think we're unbreakable. We're going to last forever.
No doubt.
But this all needs to start right from the beginning. And, and finishing up on this part of the interview, you talked about, you get out of the car and you want to start hiking. Who doesn't? Sometimes you're cooped up in a car for 2.5, 3 hours. You want to get out and hit that trail. You don't want to spend an extra 15 or 20 minutes stretching out or adding an extra mile onto your hike. You want to get out and start hiking. Who doesn't? We're like kids that way. We're like 11 or 12-year-olds.
Absolutely. But we know better, and we're human. But that's what should be done, and I need to keep a greater consciousness of that because I'm not getting any younger, and I know I could do even more than I do if I were to do that. So that is the best practice.
Now, moving on to another medical situation that has affected not just people in the outdoors, but the entire world. And that's COVID-19. And we're not out of this yet. It is still affecting every part of our lives.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're just starting to get back, like it actually now feels weird to walk in an airport or get on a plane without a mask, even though I probably should still be a little on the cautious side. It's just almost like, it's so taboo, and like, wow, I'm finally able to do this, It will probably have long lasting effects societally, how the children who've been out of school, how they develop socially, and just in every fabric of our lives is probably still going to permeate, aside from the actual infection. But just how it's really kind of brought a new reality to our lives. I was cooped up for the better part of the 2 years when we were just going wave after wave after wave, and so as you mentioned, I'm an ICU doc, and I wasn't seeing patients on the outside with new onset symptoms. We were only seeing, we closed down our office, and we were only seeing inpatients. They're coming in and sicker than anything, on the precipice of needing a ventilator, or they're that sick, and all right, let's get them in because they got potential, and just watching them over the course of 4 weeks, 6 weeks, working them every day, and they just Delta wave. You and I were talking a little bit before this. Delta wave was especially impactful I guess, in more ways than one. It was nearly uniformly fatal for the patients who got admitted to our hospital. And the treatments we had, I truly think we were getting these people too far into the disease to have made an impact on the actual infectious part of the virus. And it was all the inflammatory stuff, the cascade of inflammation that really brought them into the hospital, decreased their oxygen, caused them to have all kinds of complications. And, like I was saying before, and it's not a patting myself on the back. Critical care docs are the doctors that other doctors call upon to help them with their patients when they're not doing well. We are like the last stop. We are, our job is to stop death from happening. And I was completely ineffective at it. Because anything we called treatment was completely ineffective. And I got very close to a lot of the patients, husbands and wives who were in separate rooms. And I remember this one couple, I'd see one of them first, and they'd have me like give a endearing message and to their spouse, and I would deliver that. And so I became, just emotionally involved, emotionally invested in these people. And God, I want these people to get better and just get back to their lives. And, they're such a loving couple. And watching them die and watching the other know that and witness their reaction to it and that loss. And I'm not one who takes that home with me. I'm usually able to leave that at the hospital. But it was just happening so much. We were losing so many people that I was questioning why I was even showing up to work, because it was just nonstop. And I also share with you that there was no end in sight. It was just nonstop, long days, working 28 days a month, nonstop. Again, no end in sight. And I got into a psychological funk that the only way that I was able to shut it off, because it wasn't shutting off by itself, was to commit suicide. And I planned it out. I envisioned how my lifeless body would be found. And I was there. I was on the edge. And I reached out to a couple of friends of mine who are military veterans and who have had these thoughts themselves. And we talked, and they helped me. They really literally saved me. And of course the love of my wife and my kids. And but talking to people who have been through that and have been to the edge really pulled me out. So I myself would have been a statistic of, another healthcare provider having committed suicide as a result of COVID-19. And it would have affected my family, my friends. So it would have had implications in some way in other lives. So, and that's literally why I didn't do it, is because I couldn't do that to the people who I know love me.
Yeah, and you're very fortunate. Some people aren't able to stop, right? They don't have that. They don't go and talk to people.
Right.
We talked a little bit in a very light way. This isn't light, but in a light way about, our egos getting in the way. We're big supporters of a group called 46 Climbs, and they focus on suicide prevention and mental health awareness. And in my interviews with people, the big thing is take the stigma away. Go talk to somebody.
Yeah.
You know, there is no stigma. Talk to somebody. Because if you don't, the outcome can be a lot worse.
Right.
Talk
Absolutely.
to somebody.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we might just need to be reminded that, hey, you know what? Things really suck right now, but look at your family.
Right. Right. Had I gone through with it, and that was beginning of November, I would have never known and never experienced that was the last big wave, that it actually had ended, and I hadn't yet known it. It was actually more late October, but it was winding down by early November, and so there was no, yes, we had Omicron, but it was not even close to Delta. And then since Omicron, crickets. I would have never known that. I would have never known the future that I know now had I gone through with it. And, talking with other people, I kind of envision, us under stress. If we bottle it up, we're like a volcano. A volcano needs to let out the lava, let out the pressure, which is equivalent to us like reaching out to somebody, because if it's got no way of letting out that pressure, it'll blow like Mount St. Helens. There'll be a violent ending to it. And so letting out that pressure is talking to someone who's willing to listen, someone who cares, who gives a shit. And that is literally what saved me, and probably what saves many from carrying that out.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Welcome to the Healthcare Leadership Podcast, presented by Referral MD, your go-to resource for increasing practice efficiency and revenue. Each episode, we share tips, tricks, trends, and real stories from physicians and healthcare leaders, so you can hear what really works to grow and manage your practice. Let's get started.
And I'm glad you're sharing this with us, because I have such strong feelings that people need to hear that there is no stigma to going and talking to somebody, whether you're seeking professional help or maybe there's that loved one or a peer that you can talk to. And in your case, you had some military vets that you were able to talk to. There's nothing wrong with that. Actually, that's what you should do when you start feeling that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so they shared some of the emotional stuff that they had, not told me about. And so we connected on a much deeper level. And that's really made a huge impact for me.
I've spoken with a group that deals with recently discharged military members. Many of them have post-traumatic stress disorder. And they said that sometimes getting them out into the wilderness in groups, they're talking about things that only people in that circle really could understand.
Absolutely.
Okay. They've seen things and witnessed things that people on the outside could think about, but they weren't there. They haven't seen it with their own eyes.
Right.
And they said how beneficial it is for these veterans to get together and share these experiences.
Right. Right. They've seen stuff that you and I couldn't even dream of.
And how do they talk about that with people, though? Right? I mean, how do they talk to a layman, somebody who's maybe never even fired a gun?
Right. Right. Absolutely. And so, for them, it's a brotherhood beyond, we trained together. They fought death, avoided death together, seen stuff that no one else would see, that no movie could even depict, or reproduce in the viewer, the emotional, whatever they felt. Absolutely. And, actually, kind of funny. So I'm sort of, I'm engaged in this in this race coming up on June 18th, and our race team, I'm happy to talk about that too. I'm sorry if this is going on way longer than you wanted.
No, that's fine. This is all very interesting.
But we're working with, and alongside with, and in lockstep with a nonprofit group called Guardian Revival. And for those of you out there who never heard of it, please look them up. And Guardian Revival is doing these alternative therapies for veterans who are in that same place. And they're doing hiking therapy. They're right up in New York State. You're kind of up near you. I don't know exactly where you are, Martin, but they're in the Northeast. And so they're running hikes up there with them. They're doing equine therapy, music therapy. They're adopting animals, adopting dogs, like the badass military dogs, the Belgian Malinois and the Belgian Shepherds that these guys were used to seeing and working with in their military lives, and adopting them and literally saving these people. And so it's not just about psychotherapy or medications. There's other avenues to achieve that success. And so our race team is actually, we're trying to raise funds for this organization, and with this organization. And so we're really proud of that.
We'll make sure to put a link in the description.
All right, cool.
So anybody wants to support what you're doing or support Guardian Revival, we'll make sure there's a link so they can follow that.
Very cool. Very cool. I appreciate that.
And I want to thank you, first for your dedication to your profession. You shared a story with us, and I'm sure it wasn't easy, but it was very important. I think just to give everybody some context, you're an intensive care physician. You're like that guy. You're the last person somebody sees before it's over. So this isn't anything new to you. You're seeing people. You're dealing with their loved ones, probably going through the worst time in their entire life. This wasn't something new to you. Dealing with people that are like their loved ones laying on a table fighting for their life. Yeah. But you were in a situation like everyone in your profession. It was like, how are we fighting this? How are we going to overcome this? This isn't simply somebody coming in and, all right, these are the treatments we need to do to save their life, or to, this is what we can do to try to save their life. Like everybody in your profession, whether you're on the research end of it, or in your case, the medical profession side of it, how are we treating this? So yeah, I just, thank you for your dedication in your profession, and for sharing that important story. Cause hopefully, there's people out there hearing that. And even if one person listening says, okay, I'm not alone. I'm a nurse, I'm an ICU nurse, or, I do this in the medical profession, and I'm just mentally so beat up. And yeah, I've thought about that myself. Hopefully, even if just one person heard your story, maybe they're inspired to go talk to somebody.
Absolutely. And even non-medical folks who are contemplating that same end, who think they might not have other avenues. It's a choice to carry it out, but there are better choices. You're only really transferring your pain to those who want to see you around, who love you, and we owe it to them to keep fighting and to heal and find a way to heal and not bottle these things up. And so knowing you're not alone is probably the most important first step.
Well, Dr. Scanlon, as always, I've really enjoyed talking to you. Thanks for sharing both your knowledge with trying to keep us safe out there, especially as guys that are getting on the other side of, I don't want to say we're getting old, we're getting a little gray hair and getting up there in years. We're not young chickens anymore, but trying to help keep us safe. And do you have a date yet for the book? Is this something that's in the works right now that it's a work in progress?
I am literally halfway through the book right now. It's survival from the standpoint of, I'll go over the statistics. U.S. National Park Service data: 6 people die every week. 90 people require rescue every week. The top 5 or 6 reasons why all that happens is entirely preventable. That's where my passion comes from with all this, is to enlighten, advise, and all we need to do is prepare better in the right way. We don't have to memorize a survival skills book that thick, or a medical wilderness medicine book that thick. It's 5 things to prepare for, and about 4 or 5 field skills to know and to practice every time you're out and be good at. None of that. You won't be the person who's the statistic. And if we can reach out to the 65 million hikers of North America, we'd save a lot of lives every year. If this became the Leave No Trace was a fledgling grassroots effort back in the 1980s. And the best way, the way it became what it is today is hiker interaction. And people kind of not shaming one another, but, kind of just
informing.
Yeah. And just talking about it with each other. And hopefully this is important enough to the hiking population to eventually interact about, like, oh, hey, you don't know how to use a map and a compass? Let me show you. It's easy. Or, starting a fire. There's so many different ways of starting a fire, or shelter, or, whatever. Wear base layers in cold weather, and, what's that? All these like few things that are just, oh my God, immensely helpful. So that's really what's driving my passion to fill this little void in knowledge and attention, I guess. Backpacker Magazine and Outside Magazine have been doing a great job putting articles out there. Got to give them kudos. But in book form that somebody can just sit down and kind of digest. I don't believe there's anything else out there. So I'm gonna right now I'm on land navigation. So I'm trying to find some time between, at work, or after work, to try to think about how I'm going to present the information to those who are directionally challenged. So that's a tough one. And so I want to bring them into the picture and hopefully teach them something.
And Leave No Trace, I think, is a good example, because you could write volumes on why we need to adhere to those principles, or the long-term impacts of not adhering to each of those different principles. But they've whittled it down in a way where we can all understand it. We understand it in a way where we can now go out and inform other people about it. Like, not doing it in a preachy way or shaming people, but just here's the information. Here it's boiled down in simple way for all of us to understand. Because the truth is, protecting the environment, extremely important. Protecting ourselves out there, extremely important, because the people that are out there doing search and rescue, very hardworking people, people in your profession. I'm sure your best nights are quiet nights. You trained very hard for what you do. You love what you do, but I'm sure if you have a night where nobody comes into that ICU, that's a good night for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm happy when people aren't filling the ICU. Makes me think we're actually accomplishing something out there.
Dr. Scanlon, if we want to follow you on social media, are you on Instagram or Facebook?
I do very little on Facebook, but Instagram is my most active social media. Dr. Rob Scanlon, so Dr_Rob Scanlon, one word. I'm on LinkedIn, but Instagram is my main social media.
All right. We'll put that link in the description as well.
Great.
Dr. Scanlon, thanks again for coming back on Papa Bear Hikes, and we're looking forward to having you on to talk about your book when you're ready to publish it.
Love that. I love that. Thank you so much, Martin.
All right, everybody, remember to get out there, and as I keep telling you, be safe out there. Thanks for listening. If you haven't done so yet, go to our website, papabearhikes.com. Listen to past episodes. Check us out on social media. Go to our YouTube channel, Martin Outside. All those links are there. In addition to that, you can buy our book or see what you're missing out on if you're not a Patreon member yet. Remember to get outside, have fun, and be safe.